Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Just north of Fresno, California, tucked along the San Joaquin River, lies a place that most people only know as a fishing spot or picnic grounds. But Lost Lake Park is much more than that. Beneath these cottonwoods and river stones are layers of history, a legend of a vanished town, and even ghost stories that locals still whisper about. We are starting out today at Lost Lake Recreation Area, right outside of Friant, California. And even though this place is called Lost Lake, this is actually the San Joaquin River. If we came here a couple hundred years ago, we'd be standing in the homeland of the Yokuts, who fished these waters for salmon and thrived on the San Joaquin River's abundance. And even though the water is super clear, I haven't seen any fish yet myself. When we got here, I was a little surprised because despite it being a weekend, we have this place pretty much to ourselves. So the Yokuts lived here for countless generations, and there are actually hundreds of morteros or grinding stones that could be found in the park. But all that changed after the discovery of gold in California in 1848, which brought an influx of American settlers. With the Americans came diseases the Yokuts had no immunity to, and the rapid depletion of the river's resources. In early 1851, a temporary military outpost called Camp Barber was established along the river east of here, a couple of miles past where that dam is now. Its purpose was to oversee treaty negotiations with native groups and relocate them to the newly created Fresno River Reservation. Some Yokuts signed these agreements, but the United States Senate refused to ratify them, leaving the tribes without the promised protection. The Awanichi and some other groups did resist relocation, which sparked the brief but violent Mariposa War. Just to give an idea of how devastating the arrival of settlers was, starting with the Spanish, before contact, the Yokut population is estimated at around 70,000, one of the densest native populations in North America. But in the decades that followed, ravaged by epidemic disease and what historians now call the California Genocide, their numbers collapsed. By 1910, fewer than 600 remained. I guess we aren't completely alone here. This park is pretty big. In fact, you could say there is mush room. This place is called Lost Lake, and so far we've only been looking at a river. Let's see if we could find the Lost Lake itself. And it looks like this area hasn't been used in some time, though I imagine as hot as it is, summer isn't the high season for use. For anyone who might not know what that thing in front of us is, it's for frisbee golf. And looking at this area, once you get away from the river, things look pretty bleak. There's a small pocket of green right next to the river, and everything else is just dried out. Well, according to Google Maps, we are on the edge of Lost Lake, and I guess it's lost again because the lake is not there. It looks like Lost Lake has dried up. So even though it's currently missing, it isn't called Lost Lake because no one could find it. The lake isn't even natural. It was created in the 1930s when they were excavating sand and gravel from here to be used in making cement for the Friant Dam. The gravel pit eventually filled with water, becoming a lost pocket of the San Joaquin River. We've moved a little closer to where the lake should be. We're on the shoreline right now. When they were excavating here, they found about 357 pounds of gold, though I couldn't find any info on who got to keep that gold. With Halloween right around the corner as of the filming of this video, and Lost Lake supposedly being one of the most haunted places in the area, it feels like the perfect time to bring up the ghost stories tied to this place. Two of the most well-known are the spirit of a young boy, and the classic tale almost every haunted spot seems to share, a woman in white. One popular story goes that two fishermen were here late one night when they noticed movement along the shoreline. And honestly, this story doesn't work as well when there's no water in the lake, but they shined a flashlight towards the bushes and saw a pale boy in swim trunks, standing perfectly still at the water's edge. But when they looked back, he was gone. A moment later, they heard a splash on the otherwise still surface of the lake. Apparently, it was the spirit of a drowned boy. I did look, and I couldn't find any actual record of a drowning here. And if he were to show up today, well, at least he wouldn't have to worry about drowning. And then there's the lady in white. Some say she's been seen wandering the banks, drifting through the trees. In one account, she approached a group of teenagers asking if they'd seen her boyfriend, but when she got close, they realized her face looked decayed, as if she'd been dead for years. Like I said, every haunted place seems to have a woman in white story, and these stories are so common that Wikipedia even has an entire page devoted to them. From here, we're going to head upstream towards the dam and talk a little bit more about the less supernatural history of the area. We've moved upstream to the Palaski Bridge, which isn't this bridge, but instead, it's this bridge, or what's left of it anyway. Before 1906, ferries and wooden crossings connected the communities on both sides of the river, but as the region grew, residents wanted a permanent structure. In January of 1906, a reinforced concrete bridge opened here, replacing the ferry service. It became known as the Palaski Bridge, named after the town that briefly carried the name Pulaski, which in turn was named in honor of railroad promoter Marcus Pulaski, who had helped bring rail service to the area. By 1907, the town was renamed Friant, but the bridge kept the Pulaski name. At the time it was built, it was among the very first reinforced concrete arch bridges in California, and said to be among the largest concrete wagon bridges in North America. It was part of the old Fresno Flats Road, which later became North Fork Road. In 1940, the Palaski Bridge was briefly part of Highway 41 when the Lanes Bridge downstream collapsed. That only lasted for about a year, though, when a new Lanes Bridge was constructed. A decade later, in 1951, devastating flooding swept the bridge away. The ruins of the bridge were removed on the Fresno County side of the river, but not on the Madera County side, as they didn't think it was worth the money to remove it. And as we can see here, the new bridge was built in 1952 and is still in service today. And that dam that rises more than 300 feet above us is the Friant Dam, and where we're heading next. The Friant Dam is one of the most important structures in California's Central Valley. Construction began in 1939, part of the massive Central Valley Project, designed to store water, prevent floods, though as we saw from the Pulaski Bridge, there's mixed results with that, and supply irrigation to farms stretching hundreds of miles to the south. When the dam was completed in 1942, it created this lake behind it, Millerton Lake, and changed the valley forever. Water from here reaches farms as far away as Bakersfield, turning dry land into some of the most productive farmland in the world. But as the lake filled, the town of Millerton, which was once the county seat for Fresno County, disappeared beneath the water. But there's one little piece of the town that still remains, which is right in front of us. This is the old Fresno County courthouse, which was moved in order to prevent it from being submerged. Its original location was out this way somewhere. I'm not sure how well it shows up on the camera, but about where that sailboat is where the town was located. This courthouse was built in 1867 at a cost of $24,000. This area was first settled by non-natives when a man only known as Cassidy today set up a placer mining operation on the river. He was said to be a loud and boisterous man, maybe too loud. One day he was found dead alongside the river, killed by local natives. His legs were cut off and his tongue had been removed. If history tells us anything, though, the lure of gold isn't lessened by dismemberment now and again, and miners kept coming to the area. A settlement called Rootville sprung up here. Rootville sat along the Stockton-Los Angeles Road, which made for easy access by stage and freight wagon. Nearby Camp Barber became a permanent fort and was renamed to Fort Miller. In turn, the settlement became Millerton. By 1856, Millerton was chosen as the first county seat of the newly created Fresno County. The town quickly became the administrative and commercial hub for the area, and at its peak, Millerton had a courthouse, jail, general store, saloons, blacksmiths, and a scattering of homes along the river. This courthouse, once it was built in 1867, became the town's centerpiece. But life here wasn't easy. Millerton sat right on the San Joaquin River, which was notorious for flooding. A catastrophic flood in 1862 nearly destroyed the town, washing away buildings and cutting deep channels through the streets. Then another flood in 1867 destroyed 3 out of every 4 buildings. But by some miracle, there was no loss of life. The town being destroyed twice in 5 years was a little bit too much for a lot of residents, though, and the population plummeted. Then the real blow came in 1872, when the Southern Pacific Railroad extended its line into the San Joaquin Valley. The tracks bypassed Millerton completely, instead stopping about 30 miles southwest on the flat valley floor. A new settlement, Fresno Station, sprang up along the tracks, and within a few years, most of Millerton's remaining residents packed up and moved. In 1874, the county seat officially moved to Fresno Station, now known as Fresno. By the late 1800s, Millerton was little more than a scattering of ranch houses and a fading name on the map. Some residents held on, though. That was until the 1930s. When construction began on the Friant Dam in the 1930s, the last remaining residents were forced to move, and with the dam's completion in 1942, everything left of the town went underwater. I guess in a way, there's still one building near the town site. That white thing floating out there is called SS Relief, and it's a floating restroom. It's said that when the water levels are low enough, you could still make out the town site. The water seems fairly low right now, but I guess it isn't low enough. At least not low enough to see from a few feet above the water. The drone is flying over where the town was, but I haven't been able to make anything out. At least not yet. Unfortunately, I think all we're going to see of Millerton today is this courthouse. Before it was submerged, the courthouse was dismantled, and in 1966 it was reconstructed here, though I believe most of the interior and roof was reconstructed using new materials. It looks like a lot of the brickwork is newer too. I'm not sure how much of this is original outside of the granite. When you see historic photos of it before it was moved, it was in pretty rough shape. It looks like a bird has made its nest in one of the windows. You know what kind of bird makes a nest on a courthouse? A jailbird. Unfortunately, there was an electrical fire in the courthouse in 2022, and it's been boarded up since. But this is all that remains, at least above water, of the former Fresno County seat and an important settlement in the early American history of California. So that's our look at Lost Lake and the lost town of Millerton. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.